Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job.
Hello and welcome to Homeschool Together. Thanks so much for joining us. If you have a chance, head down into the show notes. Leave us a nice, sweet, tasty meatball review there.
We're over 50 now.
Thank you to
thank
you,
you
two souls, you kind-hearted souls who left us a review.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
very much.
And if you're interested in supporting the podcast or just supporting yourself with some pretty cool resource guides, check out the Gumroad store on the show notes as well as everything we're going to talk about today. I always do a labor of love, really, honestly, for everybody.
He puts everything in the show notes. He does all that work.
I do it for you guys. Check out the show notes.
I appreciate you.
I know, thank you. Check out the show notes. Subscribe over to YouTube. We're on a mission to get to 1,000. If you are a YouTuber, subscribe over there. Give us a like, subscribe, notification bell, do all the fun things that you know that you must do in order to support us little content creators on YouTube. Do it for us. Yeah. We are now doing a 4-part series that is going to last the next 4 weeks, and we are going to be talking about budget homeschooling.
Ooh, it's a big topic, y'all.
Big topic, and it's a big topic, and so we're going to spend 4 weeks. It's going to be a nice, we know a lot of people are starting in the new year, right in September, right with the school year, and even though we don't go with the school year, a lot of people tend to go with the school year.
Well, it tends to be the point where people have made the decision, hey, they're going to homeschool, and they're getting geared up to kind of start at that same time, and the back to school sales are all on, so it's a good time. I just want to say that we do a lot of research for these episodes. I've done a lot of work to get them prepared, and hopefully they're going to be really packed with content. I did listen to another podcast. I'm not going to say what it was. I listened to another podcast
Throwing
about
shade.
Name
names, Ariel.
I'm not going to name names about budget homeschooling, and it was just kind of almost a lackadaisical discussion of how they had saved money.
Shots fired.
But it was kind of just very haphazard. That's not what this is.
We're bringing the heat.
We are going to talk a little bit about how we personally have saved money, but these shows are going to be as comprehensive as I could make them about all the different ways that you can budget to save, how much it should. So today's show is how much it should really cost you to homeschool. And then we're going to be we're going to talk about curriculum and other manipulatives and resources and extracurriculars. And we're going to talk about books, and we're going to talk about all of it in the next 3 shows. But I just want you to know that this is going to have a lot of meat, so don't worry, because Matt's made great show notes for you.
Absolutely.
This should hopefully give you some really good ideas as we go through all the ways that you can save, or that this is, I guess I should clarify right up front, this isn't just about saving money. This is about having a proper budget. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's about knowing what it's going to cost and accepting that, I'm okay with that cost, but just kind of knowing going in so you can make a plan for it. And we're going to be talking about, ways to save and ways to accept some of the realities and the trade-offs you have to make if you want to go more budget friendly. Kind of what you may have to be more resourceful, or you may have to choose something that might not be quite as shiny and awesome. There's some trade-offs to be made. So we're going to try to do the best job.
And also understanding that there's a million different ways to do things.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so,
as in everything
when we toss out numbers, or we toss out, hey, consider this, consider that, maybe that doesn't apply to you, or maybe it applies doubly for you because, I live in an expensive area and we have to do these things, or I live overseas and I've got to buy my books. We understand that there are those challenges. And so, your local challenges are obviously going to dictate basically the numbers, but we're just going to be talking about, 30,000 foot level stuff today.
Yeah. So today's our overview and how much homeschooling should cost, and then the next 3 are going to really get into the nitty gritty. So I'm trying to make this it's like a course in how to budget homeschool. So be prepared.
We notice there's a lot of new people, and we also notice, just in behind the scenes when Ariel and Matt are eating tacos at dinner time, we're talking about our numbers and our everything. We notice there's always a lot of new people here towards the end of the summer.
Tis the time.
They want to find us. So hopefully we're going to be giving you guys some good content. If you're a seasoned professional, maybe it's time to go back and crank those numbers and realize, my goodness, I did not know that I spent $400 on markers last year. Maybe an important piece of information for you to
Yeah, sometimes, it's funny. I was kind of taking a look at how, like, trying to roughly figure out how much we had spent, and yeah, some things were a little bit surprising. So hopefully this is going to be really helpful. Did a lot of research for this one, and I think that there's going to be some good nuggets for everyone.
So, like always, we try to structure the podcast so that they're informational, they stay on point. So let's get right into it. Basically, what is the annual cost range? Like, obviously there's a huge delta. We kind of alluded to that.
Yes.
There may be some people who have, they bought a teacher and it's $100,000 a year, the homeschooler.
Yeah. Who knows?
I'm not working. Is that a cost? I mean,
right. Some people have everything handed down to them, all their curriculum from their sister or somebody, and they don't have any cost. Yeah. It does already, it is, of course, span a huge range, but on average, it's typically between $500 and $2,500 per student per year to homeschool.
Sign me up. That's cheap.
So, the way that breaks down is between $250 and $1,200 for curriculum, materials, which would be like books and supplies, manipulatives, that kind of thing. So it'd be like $50 to $550.
Yeah.
Field trips between $100 and $250, and then extracurriculars between $100 and $500. So those are all big ranges, right? I mean, you look at curriculum $250 to $1,200. That's huge.
Yeah. We're talking like a box curriculum versus a couple piecemealed digital curriculums.
Yeah, right? I mean, exactly, with books from the library, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can go. But on average, that's what it is per student per year. So the HSLDA, that's the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, says that on average, though, it's about $300 to $600 per child per year. So there is this really big range of what it kind of could be.
They're kind of on the low end, though.
But the average they're saying is like $300 to $600.
I'd love to know what those numbers are.
Yeah, so I
bet you it's just the curriculum.
It's interesting. I got this from two different sources. And one of the reasons I wanted to put this in here is because I wanted you to see how, like, these were two different major sources did not agree, and how these breakdowns can be so wild in range. So when I think this is important to kind of frame our whole discussion in that if you discuss how much homeschooling should cost or does cost with another friend who homeschools, if you're listening to another podcast, if you're reading a blog, just know that everybody has such a different answer for this. And it's really, what's homeschooling going to cost for you? And hopefully after you get done with this series, you can pencil it out and come up with, a budget of what you think it'll cost you for the year. But it is just so varied. There really is just no meaningful average because every family is so different.
But we all know that everybody here on the podcast, they're top spenders. They're out there hoarding curriculum. We talked about that in our curriculum management podcast a couple of days ago. Let's get down to it. Like, what do we need to buy? What are people? So somebody's coming in, they're kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. Maybe they're starting out with fifth or sixth grade, and they're asking, goodness gracious, that was a lot of numbers. That's a lot of ranges. What do I have to buy? Yeah.
So there's a few main things that you'll have to get. A couple of things you don't have to buy, just so that you got it kind of up. You will not have to do childcare. You will not have to do expensive summer camps. Now, you may decide to do expensive summer camps, but you don't have to do that. So those are a couple of things, like when we're talking about the difference between, your kids going to public or private and going and homeschooling. Those are a couple of big pieces.
And maybe you going back to work where would necessitate these camps.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, summer childcare, it's a huge deal, y'all.
It's a huge deal.
So that's one of those things. So you don't need to do those. So that's a great savings there. The things you do need to buy for homeschool. So a couple of main areas, right? Your curriculum, whether it's hard copy or a digital curriculum like a PDF that you download and print out, or online curriculum.
But does that include basically your language arts, your math, and then your literature curriculum and potentially science curriculums? I mean, when you say curriculums, you mean all of those things?
Well, yeah. So this is curriculum encompasses what you are required to teach by your state, and every state's different. Your mileage may vary, and what you want to teach, right? So your state may not require you to teach art, but you want to buy an art curriculum.
Jedi origami.
Yeah. Hey, we actually have a
We
book on
should have
that.
a book on Jedi origami.
So,
Star Wars origami.
yeah. So this curriculum is anything that's going to give you scope and sequence to help you teach a subject to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that can be, usually these come in about a 36-week framework to kind of mirror the normal school year. And they come in, as I said, hard copy, digital, or online. Online, they're usually like a subscription based, like
Yeah.
like a
It could
Beast
be-
Academy
Yeah,
or one
like
of
an
those.
app-based type of learning.
Right,
Yeah.
something like that, app-based or online, or something software.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of options.
So that's great. That's the curriculum. That's a 10,000, 10,000 questions, $10,000 question there that a lot of people have. We have episodes on curriculums. We'll go ahead and I'll link a couple of the ones that we really like in the review. So if you're looking for a curriculum, we'll go ahead and link those. But I think the big thing is once you have those in place, I think the literature curriculum is obviously very often the biggest thing that people are stressing about, because math and reading, fairly straightforward. There's a lot of choice there, but what about the books and all the literature they've got to read? How are they going to manage that?
Yeah, so there's books and supplies, which you'll have to get. And so, you would buy some supplies for public school. It's true. But you're going to buy way more for homeschool. So, the teachers send out those lists for the public school kids every year, and they have to, get markers and stuff to support the classroom and boxes of Kleenex and things. But you're going to buy way more for homeschool. So that's an increase in
there's
cost.
just more you're going to do, more paper, more art,
That's
more
right.
everything. Yeah.
That's right. And then lastly, there's the extras. So you've got field trips, enrichment classes, if your kid wants to take a pottery class, or you've got sports, which now maybe your sports or extracurriculars you would already do even if your kiddo was in normal school, but you might do more of those things when you're homeschooled
because
because
more free time.
you have more free time. You want them to have more social opportunities, whatever it is. You've got more extracurricular activities, co-op program fees, maybe tutoring. You may have like piano lessons, right? They can't go to the school and do orchestra, for example. I mean, most states you can actually go to the public school and do any of those things. So definitely do that. But a lot of times when you're first learning, you're going to be doing some sort of like private lessons, right? You could get, I know a family that has a math tutor because that's just not their jam. They can't teach math or don't feel comfortable teaching it for their middle schoolers. So they have a math tutor. So there's all of those extras. So one of the things I would say about this though, in these three things that we've listed, so you've got curriculum, books and supplies, and all your extras, they are all totally optional. There are families that homeschool without a curriculum. There are families that homeschool without buying any books. There are families who don't do any extras except ones that they can take at their public school or that they would have reasonably already done even if they were public school students.
Or maybe they're part of a parent partnership like us where we're getting tumbling and all those type of things.
Right. We have enrichment classes for free because it's part of our public school. So, right. So those are the three main categories of stuff that homeschoolers typically need to buy.
Yep.
But there's a lot of homeschoolers that don't buy one or all of those things. So just so you know, right, those unschoolers out there, they might not buy curriculum. Right? There's plenty of people that don't engage in those areas because they have found a different way that works for their family. But on average, everyone's looking to buy in those categories.
So we talked about the cost range, kind of a nice outline of the high level things that they need to consider when filling out that homeschool. But, you're like Matt and you're always looking for a deal. 2 tacos for $1, right?
Ooh, those are poor quality tacos.
But you know what? It fills it's a roof over the belly. Beans are a roof over the belly. Just like, yeah. But anyway, what if they want to do it on the cheap? Can they do it?
Right. So this is a question people often ask me. Okay. I know that I can get, used curriculum and I know I can buy like used books.
Or like a curriculum share or your friend has
I can
all the
borrow something like,
yeah.
Okay, how cheap can I really homeschool? Like people are always asking that. Like how cheap could I really get this
And it may
done?
not be because they're cheap, but maybe because, the funds aren't there and,
Well,
and
right.
they need to do
I mean,
it.
one of the things about most homeschooling families is that one parent is not working. Typically. That's not true for everyone, of course. And we've interviewed people for the podcast where both parents are working and they're juggling homeschooling, or you have a single parent who does work and they still homeschool. It's not that but it is oftentimes the case that one parent is staying at home, and that means that maybe funds are tighter. So yeah, people are always asking, like, how can we save? How cheap can you homeschool? So here's the technical answer. Technically, you could homeschool for free.
Yeah.
There are websites and free curriculum like Khan Academy and others. We'll talk all about curriculum later that you just don't need to spend any money on.
Yep.
You could actually get free curriculum or don't use a curriculum, do your own thing, make your own unit studies, teach your kid math yourself, do unit studies on the American Revolution or whatever it is and make it up yourself with books from the library. So, there are people that do that.
Use the library.
Yeah. Use the library for all your books.
I mean, you're already paying for it anyways. You might as well use it, right?
It's in your taxes. Manipulatives often can be made out of, household items to use for math and different things.
Rocks and sticks, Ariel. This caveman homeschool.
You can do work digitally,
Yeah.
and save the cost of a lot of supplies. You can get a lot of free resources, up to and including full curriculum and supplies if you have a public homeschool charter, a parent partnership like us, or your state gives you some sort of a kickback. A couple of states do support homeschoolers, and you get a little bit of money for that.
Yeah.
So there are a variety of options. You could do this for free. However, my big caveat to that is that in practicality, usually it's not free. So you're going to have to pay for like software and computer equipment. You're going to probably pay for activities to do because
that's a hard one to get out of, especially with socialization being such an important thing.
Exactly. We want to give our kids not just a great education, but a great experience as homeschoolers. And oftentimes that means that we're paying for some sort of extra classes, activities, tutoring, lessons, that kind of stuff happens.
And there's also some like curriculum specific things, whether it's like math, hey, you need an abacus. Or
right, there's some things you can't just make easily. I mean, you could maybe, but it's a little tougher. You're going to want to go on field trips. You're going to want to go to the aquarium when you're studying the ocean.
What if you're using a curriculum and it requires a spine or a book that is not at your library? We've run into this problem.
Right.
What do you do?
Do you sub it for something that they have, or do you go out and get that thing? So, it's. You can homeschool very affordably. I don't know that you can really homeschool entirely for free and still create that rich and engaging experience for your kids. But you can still do it affordably.
I think most people, I think the minimum for most people is that, in their own lives, in their own family, in their own house, most of us who are listening to this, we would be, whether they would go to a public school or private school, we'd be buying educational materials for them to use around the house. So like there's always that kind of rolling boil of course we're going to get things that help educate them.
Yeah, there's going to be some cost.
That's kind of like the floor. That's the floor cost. And I think you can get there, but most families are always going to be getting things for their, the kids, even if you just go to Goodwill and you're getting, used books and stuff. I mean, you're always going to spend a few bucks here and there for art supplies and whatnot. So that's kind of like, I think, the floor.
Yeah, there is going to be some cost. And I think to create a really rich homeschool environment, like a book-rich environment in your home, to have really great experiences of field trips and to have engaging learning materials like good curriculums and things, there's going to be some cost to that. Now, what's cool about this is you get to decide where you want to put your money. And that's a lot about what we're going to talk about in this series is we'll talk about different ways to do things affordably. And there may be something that's really important to your family. Like maybe for your family, having a literary rich environment is super important. And you're going to spend all your money on great used books and new books if you can't get them used.
Yeah,
and you're going to do that.
Yeah,
we're a good example of that. And maybe you're not going to do the experiential stuff as much. You're not going to go to the aquarium and the Museum of Natural History as much.
Maybe you're an outdoor family, like our friends up in Alaska, and they invest a lot of money into outdoor gear and whatnot, and that costs a lot of money. But that's a huge piece of their homeschools to explore and experience the nature.
And that's where they've decided to put their money.
Right?
So if you've got a limited amount of funds, and I mean we all have a limit, right? But if your funds are very tight, hopefully the things we'll discuss in the series will help you understand where you think you can save and how that coordinates with your homeschool values of what you really want to give your kids. And this really depends on the type of kids too, right? Some kids, they need like lots of classes and activities and things. And other kids are going to really benefit from having a home full of books or a home full of art supplies and crafting supplies.
Or maybe they're big readers and they're just on their Kindle all the time. We have our friends whose son reads on his Kindle all the time. I mean, that's a cost right there.
Right. Yeah. Maybe it's investing in a Kindle and an Amazon Unlimited subscription, or, they just get them from the library, whatever it is. So it's going to be different for every family. I don't think that I don't think it's really practical for it to be entirely free, but it can certainly be very affordable. And we're going to do our best to help you know where you can save and where it makes sense for your family to save.
Errol, you should have been a used car salesman. Tell me about the hidden costs you're not telling me about. Lying by omission. What are the hidden costs of
Right.
homeschooling?
So we talked about the main things that you think you're going to have to buy. We talked about things you don't have to do, like childcare and expensive summer camps if
But
you don't
Errol,
want to.
we still need to go out for dates.
But yeah, but there are some things in homeschooling that you will have to pay for that you might not be thinking about. So there's going to be extra gas and wear and tear on your car for your field trips,
these days
classes, co-ops.
Can really hurt, right?
Yeah, it really can. You know, if there was one parent partnership we were looking at that was like half an hour away, and we go next year we're going to go 4 days a week. Like that's a lot of gas and mileage,
8
wear
hours
and
a
tear
day
on your
the-
car.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So there's that. There's the part about your car, and that's not just for classes, but for field trips and co-op stuff and
Yeah,
other kinds
that
of
was just
things,
our parent partnership.
activities.
That doesn't include the sports. You're right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Depending on where you live and how far you've got to drive. So there's obviously if your kid's going to school, like public school, they would go there, they would do all their classes, and they'd stay after for sports practice, and then you'd pick them up later, or they'd get bused home, right? You used to get the late sports bus home,
Yep.
and all those transportation costs were taken away. So that's going to be an extra cost just to consider.
Heating and cooling. I know a lot of people like
Yep.
us. We have like our Nest thermostat, and when we leave, it knows we're not there, and it kind of like lets the temperature drift up
That's right.
or lets it drift down based on the time of the year. But if you're in the home all the time, it's always staying warm and cool. I mean, those are just like little hidden costs.
Right. The heating and cooling, definitely. And because we're home and we want to be comfortable, we mess with it more, right? Which goes into the next thing, which is there's going to be increased food bill because let's just face it, we're home. And so we tend to eat more at home. We tend to snack more on stuff. It just kind of happens. It doesn't have to happen to you, but oftentimes I hear homeschool families go, their food bills went up because we are home more and the kids are suddenly more snacky. So because we're home all the time, there's going to be increased electrical, water costs because you're home the rest of the day. So just know there's some utility things. So those are just some small hidden costs. I think that the other thing I would say about a hidden cost is that you can start off the year with a really great plan. Be like, okay, my budget is X, and I'm going to buy this curriculum, and I'm going to purchase just these books and these other ones at the library, and I'm signing my child up for this one class or one tutor, and then we're going to have this one sport, and I've got it all laid out. It's all perfect. My budget is great. And then we start the year,
And Johnny
we
doesn't
find
like
out
piano. He wants to do the oboe.
right. We need to change instruments.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that sport didn't work out, or he made great friends with his teammates and they're all doing this second sport. And so then you hear all of a sudden you're doing spring baseball too, or we get into that curriculum and it doesn't work for me and I have to change it. Or the books I plan to get from the library, everyone's doing that same curriculum. I can never get these books. So I'm going to have to make changes.
But also like drift, like you just get interested in a unit study.
Right. All of a sudden you're like, my kid is all about birds. And then I want to buy owl pellet kits so I can do dissection. And we want to do this. And you get into the rabbit holes. And all of a sudden your spending grows when you weren't necessarily planning on that.
I think the drift is the big one. Like
the drift is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge because you want to
Pacific Rim drift.
you want to encourage your kids, right, to go down these rabbit holes.
Yeah, I
and
know.
so, you start off with a great plan.
YouTube's great, but eventually they got to touch something. Like the pellet kit, I think it's a great example. You get these like, we get these great National Geographic kits. They're like 10 or 15 bucks, but you do 3 or 4 of them. It's like 50, 60 bucks right there,
It's, when you're doing public school,
Yep.
you get your kids new clothes, new shoes, you buy the school supply, their new backpack and binders and stuff. You get the school supplies on the list from the teacher, you send them to school. And then the school takes care of all the rest of it.
Or the new sport. We didn't think we were going to play baseball. We didn't think we were going to play soccer. Those type of things. All of a sudden I got to buy cleats. I got to buy a bag. I got to get shin guards. I got to get a soccer ball. I got to get nets for out back. And boom, you've just dropped $150.
And some of this stuff can happen even if you went to public or private, right? Your
Exactly,
kids at home could get really into robotics or something, and you'd have to buy this stuff anyway. But we just wanted to kind of say that I think the biggest hidden cost of homeschooling is as your budget changes throughout your homeschooling year, as you have to change something, augment something, your kids want to go deeper. So you should, when you're budgeting, leave some reserve. In program management, we call it like the program manager overage. Right. So we like reserve a bit of this, and we just like, oh yeah, that's our reserve. And we
Buffer.
keep it.
Buffer.
Yep. We save that buffer so that someday we eat into it and then we're happy that we had it. So make sure that at the beginning of the, whatever your year is, if it's now, that you save some if you are on a tight budget, because you will need that at some point.
So we talked about the range of the costs. We did a little bit about like kind of high level view of what they need to buy. A little bit about, doing homeschooling on the cheap, kind of understanding, what are those base level costs and kind of the idea of free, and then also kind of these hidden costs. We're going to do 3 more episodes coming up here that are going to kind of dive into various aspects here. And so hopefully you guys will stick along with us for this month. But we need to get a little bit of, high level parting thoughts. You will overspend in your first year. Like if you're sitting here.
First year or two,
you're going to overspend.
You're going to buy more than you need to buy.
You're finding things and you're discovering things and you're understanding your learner. And it's actually a fun thing. And that's, I think, where the drift takes over, is because you are having so much fun, or your kid's having fun, or you're trying to find the fun, right? Because maybe a curriculum that you just spent a bunch of money on doesn't click. We've heard the horror stories. I bought this $1,000 curriculum, didn't work. We just, they wanted to unschool instead,
Totally.
That's kind of like, that would be obviously a wide swing there, but, just having those ideas that you're going to maybe drift around, try different things. And maybe you finish something early and you want to do kind of a review. This is something that we've been doing a lot of, which is like a lot of the reviewing things. And so we're buying more books and more curriculums and more workbooks and all these type of things. And so there's always this drift. There's always these overage costs. You will probably go over the first 2 years.
Yeah. So if you are a second or third year homeschooler and you're looking at it and going like, man, I spent so much to homeschool these last couple of years, really kind of audit that, because the chances are, we did it. I think everybody does it.
Sometimes
you have bought more than you probably needed to because you were excited, your kids were excited. And hey, if you have the money, that's fine. But don't worry that that's maybe every year. The other thing is that it will get more expensive as it goes along. So your earlier grades of elementary are easier and cheaper to homeschool than your later grades, right? There's a lot of math manipulatives you can fudge, but at some point in high school, you're going to need to buy a microscope. So,
or you're going to need to buy a nice calculator, a TI-83 or something.
Right. Or your kid's going to need a Chromebook so that they can do their work. I mean, it's going to get more expensive. The curriculum is going to get more expensive. It goes up as you get older.
It's more sophisticated too.
Yeah. Just kind of plan on that's something that's going to grow.
Yep. And, talking a little bit about those costs, there are no federal, at least in the United States, obviously we have some overseas listeners, but there are no federal tax breaks for us, but we do have a lot of state tax breaks. We have some state kickbacks, as you alluded to earlier. There are some states that are experimenting with, backpack funding and things of that nature. So there's starting to be kind of an interest in, subsidizing, the cost of homeschooling through some type of, kickback program, but it's not universal. It's only in a few states. So most people are under the regime of it's out of your own pocket.
Right. But there's a few of you, you in Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Minnesota. There's a few different states. Look at your own state and find out if you have any kind of a tax deduction or anything for homeschool or for educational supply purchases. So really look into that. And dovetailing with that, look into education savings accounts like Coverdell, or there's some state-specific plans. So a lot of times it'll allow you to put money tax-free into, or not money tax-free. You put money into it, and then it grows tax-free, and then you get to spend it on like tuition and other educational expenses. So there could be some ways to get some tax breaks. But in general, we don't, in the United States, we don't get a lot. We don't get a lot of deductions or credit for the fact that we are operating as a school and buying all these supplies and books and things for our kids, which is a real shame, but that's just not the way that it works.
And kind of best practices, go out there and make some friends and see if you guys can use common curriculum.
Yeah,
sharing
definitely.
Curriculum. That's something we're doing with another family of ours, kind of sharing that curriculum. Using curriculum more than once. We're using kind of the Right Start Math, where we're going to do bundled curriculum where we have our older go along with our younger, say when we come back and do the around the world, journey that we just
with Built-in
completed
Library.
with our younger daughter. Our older is going to come along with us for that whole year. And so we're going to double dip there. And that's
Yeah.
going to save us some money there.
There's some curriculums that you can use over again for the next child, assuming that child that's going to work with their learning style, right? You can do some legacy schooling.
Exactly. Or managing your curriculum in an appropriate manner. There's a lot of curriculum out there that uses workbooks. If you tear those workbooks out, and if you can do those workbooks on behind a sleeve, and you can erase, you can then use that for a second kid or a third kid.
Right. We're going to talk a lot about curriculum and how to get the most out of your curriculum dollars. But just know that there are lots of tricks to the trade.
Yeah. And I think that becomes even more important when there's more kids.
That's absolutely true.
Yes.
The kind of takeaways that we would like you to have from just this overview episode is that, homeschooling on a tight budget really requires you to be resourceful. And there is a cost in your time and energy. And I know it's not a monetary cost. So it's not like, that's kind of hard when people say, well, there is a cost. It's a different type of cost. Know that it is more expensive, but way easier and less time consuming to just buy everything, to just buy it and have the curriculums where they put it all together for you and everything is done and you just follow the script, right? And it comes in a big box. That is the most expensive and easiest thing to do.
So you may pay for ease of implementation.
Right. So know that the tighter the budget you're on, the more of your time will be required to be resourceful. And you can save that money, but you have to prepare for the time that it'll take. It may mean that you need to set aside, some amount of time every week or every month that you're going to be looking for the next resources or putting together your own unit studies or whatever it is, because you're trying to save those extra dollars. So just know that going in, there is a trade-off there. And there may be some areas where you decide that it's too much time. And it's really hard when you're first or second year homeschool, even second year homeschool, and your kids are still really young, to know, I can say I could put together my own unit study for, doing, studying about land mammals or something. I could do that. Right. And I think about it, I could probably do that, but I don't know, what would it take to put together my own units, to do my own teaching of learning to read, and my own phonics thing, right? I just don't know, and I haven't been in that, and maybe I might find that land mammal surprises me too. It's just, and sometimes it sounds easier to do, and we look at the sample weeks of these curriculums, and we're like, I could do that, right? That's not that complicated. Let me tell you, it is actually that complicated.
Well, it's sort of a it's that joke. I always say that if you're going to spend 40 hours preparing your taxes, you might as well have just paid somebody like an accountant to do those for you.
But it didn't cost you $500 to have your taxes done, which is what I always say to him every year. So,
but it goes back to you're exchanging your time. So if you do want to do those land mammals and you find a unit study that is, it's land mammals of North America. Well, I really want to do South America, but could you just do North America? There are some gives.
Or could you get that and learn from them about what the good key elements were, and then extend it into another continent, right?
Yeah, you got to make those trade-offs. There's always trade-offs.
There is going to be a trade-off. Your time is definitely going to be a part of this,
and that becomes even
part
more,
of saving this money.
I think it's obvious, but it becomes more complex when you start having more than one kid. When you got multiple kids in there, and
Absolutely.
I'm starting to feel that pressure now as my 3-year-old is starting to do some quasi homeschooling. I'm feeling that pressure of having to manage both educational, tracks. And it's hard because both kids are at different levels, and I have to I have to gear up for one kid and I got to gear down for another kid. And it's it gets your mind going. And if you're also spending hours building curriculum, it can be a lot. And to avoid that burnout, we have a long episode about, homeschool burnout. And those are things you need to consider when you're making these choices and you're making these decisions.
Absolutely. Homeschooling really, it doesn't have to break the bank, but you do have to have a good plan. So not only do you have to be resourceful along the way, but you have to plan well from the beginning if you're really going to stick to a budget. And part of this is identifying what your budget is. Mm-hmm. Truly, what are you prepared to input monetarily into your homeschool and at what times. Like maybe it's like, okay, here's what I have to spend up front before the school year starts, which is where you can get your curriculum and things. And then here's how much I could spend per month through the school year on this. So you know when you may decide to buy books and things, and know that you might want to pool some of your budget money together, some of your, say, oh, I'm going to spend, let's say I'm going to spend $100 a month or something, or $50 a month. You may want to like pool a few months so that you're ready to take advantage of that Target buy two get one free book sale that comes up once a quarter,
or if a curriculum,
or whatever,
or if a curriculum that you like tends to go on sale, sign up for their
sale.
newsletter, wait for it to go on sale, buy it then.
Right. So I think if you know that you're in this tight budget category, the best thing that you can do is really put it on paper for yourself about what you're prepared to spend and when you're prepared to spend it. And then you can listen to the rest of these episodes and really look at like, okay, this is how much I have to drop on curriculum right now. Okay, here's where I want to save. Or maybe, hey, I'm going to save money on my curriculum. I'm going to do some cheaper things there because I want to do more field trips over here, right? There's going to be a lot of maybe robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? You have to like, you're going to have to figure out where you want to allocate your resources. And your resources are time and money and energy. And where do you allocate those to? And that's a big part of the mix. So I think our homework assignment would be for you, for those of you who know you're on a tighter budget.
Ariel,
homework.
This is homeschool. We don't do homework.
Right. For those of you that know you're on a tight budget, start thinking about this and start putting something down on paper so that you can understand, because it really can quickly snowball. And especially when those book sales come up, all of a sudden things go south. Ask me how I know. And all of a sudden you've dropped tons of money on things you weren't expecting to. Not that that's always a bad thing. And, it's led to some great content for our house, but get your budget together, understand what it is so that you're not surprised later and you don't have to make, you don't make decisions that then like, hey, I bought this super expensive curriculum at the beginning, so then I don't have any money for all the rest of this stuff for the rest of the year because I've already blown my budget. Really think it through so that you can be prepared to make those decisions. And the last thing I want to leave everybody with is remember, you have complete control over the cost of your homeschool. Yeah. I want to say that again. You have complete control. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to let yourself get carried away buying stuff. But it is to say that unless there's something in your state that mandated you buy something, and I don't know of a state that does that, so please let me know if that's the case. You are making all the decisions. You decide on the curriculum. You decide on the books. You decide what supplies you're going to buy, what extracurriculars your kiddo is going to do. This is all within your control to decide what you want this to cost. But there are going to be there may be extra effort required if you need it to come in under a certain level, but no one is dictating to you how to do this. It's you and your kids working together on what you want to learn and how much you want to spend, and then finding a way to make that happen. So don't feel pressure. Like, I know that some people are in groups, co-op groups and stuff, and everybody's like buying the Timber Doodle crate for $1,100 a year. And, you feel this like pressure to, get the same things or whatever. Everyone's talking about Right Start Math, so I'm going to buy this expensive Right Start Math manipulative kit. And we love Right Start Math, but it is expensive manipulative kit, right? So, just know it really is up to you. Yeah. Nobody is telling you what you have to buy for your school. And there's lots of great ways to make it affordable. And we are going to do everything that we can to help you find those affordable paths.
So this is episode 1 of 4.
Tuned.
Get out there, mow some lawns, save a few bucks. Let's get into it.
Lawns. Your kids mow some lawns.
Of course.
All right. So stay tuned with us. And we're going to be asking you along the way too, what your favorite budget-friendly ideas are for each of the categories that we're going to talk about.
I hope that we can source some more info. So if you're listening to this, we'll be posting this in the Facebook groups.
Absolutely.
Get in there, comment. Throw some comments on YouTube. I know there's a bunch of you guys who listen on YouTube. Throw some comments into the
right. Tell us your
below.
favorite ways that you save money in your homeschool.
Oh, man. Oh, Jammo. That's going to be...
And get your budgets together, folks, so that you're ready for the next few episodes and you can start making some plans.
Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time,
Happy homeschooling!